Welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar, SEO Beyond Just the 10 Blue Links, presented by Search Engine Land and iQuanti. I'm Danny Goodwin, Editorial Director of Search Engine Land. Before we get started, I've got a few viewing tips for you. If you have any audio issues, you can click the audio icon on your screen. If you have any viewing issues, you can use the Q&A section to communicate with us. And you can send questions and comments directly to the speaker about his presentation at any time. Joining us today is Wayne Shikansky, Vice President of Search and Site Experience at iQuanti. Welcome, Wayne. Thanks so much for joining us, and I'm going to turn things over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Danny. Happy to be here. And I want to thank everybody that's joined us. I know we have a vast, wide range of audience all over the world joining. So I appreciate you taking your time out of your day, whether it's day or night or morning or wherever it is. Happy to be here to talk to you about this. Interesting, fun topic that we get to kind of dive into today. And one of the things that we want to kind of talk about is the SEO, what it's looking like in today's age beyond just the 10 blue links. And when I say that the 10 blue links are not enough, that's what we're going to dive into today. Again, my name is Wayne Shikansky, and I head up the global SEO practice at iQuanti. iQuanti is a digital marketing performance agency out of the New York area headquarters, with offices global around the world as well. And we primary disciplines are in search, paid media, as well as some site experience and some conversion testing and optimization. We do have some deep analytics as well. We blend that all together and offer all of our services that we do. So if you're interested in some services, check us out. If not, my goal today is not to sell you anything. I am looking to educate, inspire conversation, and would love to get any feedback as we kind of go through this. So without any further ado, let's jump into this. And when I have been asked, and I work with clients, large enterprise clients all over the world, as we've seen the evolution of SEO take place, what we're really finding is that discovery options are a lot more widespread than they used to be. There's a lot more platforms that are involved. There's a lot shorter attention spans from the audience. Everybody's quicker. Look at our behavior, what we're doing. We're not necessarily reading 2,000-page articles. We're going to a 5-second, 10-second TikTok. So our behavior patterns have changed dramatically as we do this. And the types of content that we're consuming has also diversified than what it is. So there's a time and a place for everything. And we want to kind of talk about each one of those and what this means. The punchline to the story is that SEO is more broad than it used to be. There's more that needs to be done, and your number one impact is going to be content. So kind of keep that in mind as we look at this, what this is going to do to your content plan and your overall strategy as we go through this. Okay. Of course, like anything else, it always starts with the customer. In this particular case, we want to understand who your persona is. This is just good foundational work that you do across the board with any type of opportunity analysis. Anytime that you're going to look at SEO as a channel and you're going to drive performance through that, you're going to really make sure it's customer centric. So in this particular case, we have persona that this middle-aged, young 30-something is looking to do a house remodel, primarily within the kitchen. What's interesting is when I talk about that journeys are more fragmented than they used to be. If you're a bank and you're looking to have secure that home remodeling loan application, that is probably the very last part of this journey. When somebody's looking to do a kitchen remodel, we can look at all of our own behaviors, but almost one of the very first things that somebody's going to do is go straight to the creative and look at the design ideas. And that typically would include Pinterest, TikTok, YouTube, other types of showcases, DIYs, local places where they're going to give you examples of kitchen layouts, cabinets, hardwares, different design ideas. So when we look at this, I'm kind of exaggerating this particular journey just because I think almost everybody can relate to this. But in essence, it really applies to almost any journey. If you're looking to how to build credit, you're typically maybe not going to go right down to, hey, let me apply for a secured credit card. You're trying to understand what are the things that are going to influence the credit rating of your overall profile and your FICO score. And that's going to take some research. The research doesn't typically always start and at Google, it's starting across the board on other platforms, other types of content. So these are the first two things we want to kind of understand, is that discovery options, there's more platforms than there used to be that are widespread, and the journeys are just not as linear as they used to be. They're a lot more fragmented. So those are the first two things we want to understand. As you look at a journey, we can kind of see that this is just kind of a mock-up journey for something as we look at this, but it touches several different types of platforms as you get from awareness stage, the upper funnel and educational, you get more into a mid funnel, and then ultimately you get down to a acquisition or purchasing decision. Now that persona could look like this, but the next one can look like this. So it can be all over the map. And one of the things that I love to say, and I coin quite often, is that if SEO is done correctly, every single page on your website becomes your home page. Again, every page of your website becomes your home page or your starting page. And that means everybody that is looking as part of the journey is typically at a different stage of the journey. Somebody might be on the yellow path in the mid funnel. Somebody else might be on the green path in the upper funnel, or the green path of the lower funnel. Wherever they are, they need to find your content on the platform that they're consuming, and it has to make sense and be relevant, and then connect the dots to them. So again, this is really critical for you to understand that the journey is the most important part of this, and you have to do the data science. You have to understand the keywords. You have to group those in the topics, and then put this in kind of a timeline or a flow of the connection of the dots of where somebody's going to go from what topic to another topic. That way you can understand the journey as a whole. Okay. If you understand the journey, you're going to understand that that journey drives a lot of different content. That content is going to be consumed at different stages, different platforms. But what we want to talk about, since Google still owns about 86% of the overall search landscape, we're going to really still focus a little bit on Google with some expansion. I'm going to talk a little bit about Gen AI, about some ChatGPT. We're going to get some good stuff in there, some data that it will look at you. And hopefully I can kind of open up your eyes and show you some things to look at beyond just the 10 blue links. So I think the first thing to understand is the SERP. As we look at the search engine result page, what it used to be and what it is today is vastly different. And if you even go back more years, you all know, if you've been in this industry for a while, this continues to evolve and change. And every year, every quarter, there's something that's new coming up. Google's always testing different SERP features, trying to make this more readily available. It's looking to get more unique and relevant content closer to a zero-click sum, make Google's SERP page really fulfill a lot of the heavy lifting. So in the past, we would have results, you'd have the paid, and then it would be more linear about the 10 blue links. Now, when you look at the right, you have things like the AI overviews, the featured snippets, the people also ask, knowledge graph, things to know, top stories, perspectives, map pack. I mean, it just kind of goes on and on and on. So as we look at this, I think it's really critical that you understand that even as we look at this first page, and this particular keyword is just venture capital, and you can kind of see that above the fold, there's a lot triggering what's going on above the fold. So you don't really even get to the organic results until the bottom of this page, or even the second below the fold. So you have the AI overview, you have the featured snippets, you have a knowledge graph in this particular case, and the people also ask. And then eventually you get to the organic results. So as we kind of move this through, another screen, as we kind of get into this, you get the things to know, the top stories, you get different perspectives. Eventually you get some organic results. You also get a map pack for anybody looking for this. And as you kind of get through this entire SERP layout, you're noticing that the 10 blue links are pretty subdued overall as we look at this, that there's a lot going on in the SERP. This is the key that we want to look at when we talk about beyond the 10 blue links. It is all of these SERP features that are happening And is this part of your content plan? Is this part of your SEO strategy? How do you improve your overall organic visibility? And can you drive a larger impression share by occupying more of this space? So let's jump into the different types that we're looking at here. The videos, obviously the video results are part of this. You have video carousel and video results. I think as we look and see the data of what's happening overall in the market, video has continued to be on a climb month over month, quarter over quarter, and even year over year as we're looking at this. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the US here as we look. It's owning about 7% of that market share, where Google's at that 86%. And we're going to get into some of the other metrics as well. But when you look at the video, it becomes a critical component of this. Now, your video is actually occupying a search result position within Google. So you're going to want to take observation of that, of what's triggering a video and what's not. And of course, this is beyond just the YouTube channel, which is a whole nother element that we want to do. Then you have the shorts. And as you look at your video strategy, you want to look at, can I take a video? How do I know what terms or what topics do I create video on? Which I'm going to show you a quick trick coming up in a moment here on that. But once you understand the topics, you create the video, how can you slice and dice that video to repurpose it in multiple formats? Can you reformat it for TikTok? Can you create a short? Can it be on Instagram? As you're embedding this, can you bring it into the page and get the relevancy that you're looking for? The whole idea as we're doing this is to serve up and understand what your audience is looking for. And if your particular keyword is triggering video results, that is something that your audience is looking to consume. So you're going to want to make sure that you embed this into your overall strategy on how to do video. Again, just more examples as we look through this. Discussion and forums. This is relatively new within the last year, the relationship with Reddit and Quora. This is bringing it out. This has really jumpstart overall the platforms for Reddit and Quora. But these answers are coming in here. I'm going to show you an example coming up, but I think it's really key to understand what type of modifiers in your keyword strings are actually triggering these results. And then I think it's important, and we're going to show you a matrix of how to actually understand what keyword is triggering every one of these. So hang with me. Don't get overwhelmed as we're talking about this. How do we do all of this? I'm going to show you a really easy, cheap way to do this in order to figure out what needs to be done. But it is important that you understand the type of query and the type of modifier that's triggering an overall discussion and forum. And then you have to ask yourself, is my brand part of this? Does my brand even want to be part of these discussions? So discussions and forum is a critical part of this. You have different sources that are coming across the web. Of course, your image pack has been there for a while. This is a strategy in itself to get your images ranked. This part of the algorithm is actually quite antiquated. Primitive maybe is the better word than antiquated. The file name of the image is actually drawing more of an exact match or partial match of the query. And that is one of the primary reasons why your images are getting served up the way they are. So again, if you're looking at image optimization, you don't need to keep that whole DSC 001.4.jpg coming out of your camera, or you don't want to create this as ball.jpg. You want to really describe your image optimization. If it's a boy kicking a ball, name it boy hyphen kicking hyphen a hyphen soccer hyphen ball.jpg. What this allows it to do is if somebody's looking for an image that's a boy kicking a soccer ball, your image, the file name is matching that, and you're going to come up where it needs to be. So kind of a pro tip there. Nobody said your file name has got to be within just a few characters or a single word. It can be a longer short phrase or keyword phrase. Everything that you want a space, make sure and include a hyphen, not an underscore, as we look at that. But if you name your images, this is one way to optimize your overall images based on queries. It also helps the hearing or the visual impaired from any hearing aid type of things. It's going to read what that image is. And that description, along with the alt tag, is really going to be useful to do that. So I think image optimization is one part of the practice that kind of gets kicked down the road a little bit. It gets deferred. It's a lot of effort, and it doesn't really get kind of a relook and coming back. But it is something that you can do on the way. Make sure and kind of tell your designers that when you're saving an image, describe what that image is and create the file name appropriately. And right out of the chute, you're going to have better luck coming in here. As we look at other things, we talked about Reddit and Quora already. YouTube is definitely part of this overall strategy as we look at what's going on with Google. They're bringing this in. But let's switch to what's happening. If you can take a single keyword, and I just took any random keyword at this point, and this was how to build credit. We do a lot in the financial sector in iQuanti, so this data is top of mind for me. It's something that we're very accustomed to, but it can apply to any sector, any category as you look at this. And what's interesting about this term, this is a real result, a real screenshot. And if you take notice here, there is no organic result above the fold. You have the top 4 questions, or the people also ask, and then right below that, you have 2 Reddit and 1 Quora underneath it. There is no organic ad, and in this case, there was no paid ad either. So this is one where your organic position, even if you're in rank number 1, your CTRs are going to be affected. They are going to decline. And that's, as we kind of go through this, the whole why, the so what. One of the things I always talk about is a so what, now what principle. And so what, why are you telling me this? Why do I care? And now what? Well, what am I supposed to do with this? And the so what about why we're talking about this today is that if your organic results in first or second or third position are below the fold, your CTR rates are going to decline. So oftentimes I get asked, well, my traffic's declined, but my rank position hasn't changed. What's going on? Well, typically it's a new SERP feature that has pushed your organic result down in the absolute positioning, and the CTR has been dropped or declined because of that. So it's definitely something to monitor. Now, as I look at this, I'm trying to describe kind of the why we want to do this, but it's not an or statement, it's an and statement. So it's not, do I get in the people also ask, or do I get on first ranking? It's an and statement. You want both. Again, we're now talking about SEO beyond just the links, and that is all of this additional features on Google. Again, all the additional features and discussions on different platforms and all the different content types that we're looking at. What's interesting is I can take the same keyword and I can go to Reddit and I can say, okay, how to build credit. And it pulls up all the posts on the left-hand side here of this. And this would be one of those things, does your brand actually participate and contribute to the Reddit discussions? Some brands, the restrictions, and it's kind of maybe a PR nightmare because you're opening yourselves up to a lot of comments. I've seen some brands come into this world as kind of a customer care unit to try to help provide customer care in part of the discussions. But either way, you're going to have to ask yourself, how much of these discussions do we want to be a part of? And if you're only going after the lower funnel of acquisition, you're going to get a very small piece of this pie. Another term that I like to say quite often is, if you want to own the user, you need to own the journey. So if the journey is something that you want to be a part of to get that user, you're going to be distributing content, getting content ranked across all of the touch points of the journey, which means you have to understand what the journey looks like and what those touch points are. But this would be one that you need to be in the Reddit. And in the same thing, not only the posts, but in this particular case, the communities as well. There is a whole series of communities around credit building and credit scores. This is something that you could create, or you could start being part of these discussions as well. But don't overlook this. Know what keywords, know what topics are triggering this, and get involved and be part of these discussions. If you do that, you're going to increase your overall organic visibility. You're also going to increase your chance of being seen and brought into the SERP based on keyword queries like this. So it's not so much about, hey, we have to really rank in Reddit, as much as Reddit queries are showing up in Google, and how do I be a part of that? So you need to connect those dots of which ones are triggering what. Quora, same thing. Not much different. Again, same query. There's more conversation going on in Quora, and again, your brand needs to be part of these discussions if you're part of that. Remember, everyone, this is just one particular keyword. So as you look at TikTok, and again, how to build credit, the topic is being discussed. What's really interesting about this, as I look, the results are on the left-hand side of the screen, and then I just double-clicked on one of the results that had part of the following. These are just average Joe people. All of these results are not big brands. So you would think that a big bank would be in here, or an aggregator like NerdWallet or Bankrate or something like that would be in here as well. But it's not. It's just your average Joe talking about this. And these are micro influencers, or maybe somebody's got a really large following and they are a very large influencer. But brands can be part of this discussion as well. And part of your strategy can be looking at influencers like this and having them talk about your product, plus having your brand be part of this as well. But nonetheless, the takeaway is that your content, or your topics, part of your journey, is being discussed on other platforms. And this is part of SEO. And this has nothing to do with the 10 blue links on Google. It is part of this, though, as you want to look at that. And how does all of this kind of wrap together and connect? And what does that look like? YouTube results. Again, how to build credit. Amazingly, the top result is 8 years old. Unbelievable. I can't believe a video, and I'm sure this person is shocked as well that it has held this position for so long. But in this particular case, that's an opportunity for brands to come in with new content, better content. We often talk about Google's algorithm, and Google relaunched a different core update. Again, March, just another core algo update. I don't normally talk a lot about core updates, but I do bring it up in this particular case because what's applicable is a core update is often defined by Mueller on Google's Webmaster Hangout, is that if you were to describe what were the top 10 movies in the year 2000, and you wrote that list in 2000, and then you were asked yourself in 2020, 20 years later, what is the top 10 movies of year 2000? And you wrote your list in that 20 years later, that list would have some overlap, but it's not going to be identical. Why? It's the same movies. It's the same period, it's the same question. Why is it different? Well, our perspective 20 years now has gone by. It's changed. We think that now what a movie was great back then, maybe it wasn't top of mind, or we didn't remember it, or we didn't really think it's that great anymore. What does that mean? That's at the core definition of what a core algorithmic update is for Google. It means that the results that used to be there are just not viewed the same. They're just slightly different. So in this particular case, connecting all the dots, why is that important? Well, in this result that's 8 years old, this video, how to build credit, it's the only result that's up there. You could make a better version that matches that intent stronger today and go ahead and displace these results. So these are the different opportunities that you want to look at, part of this, and all part of your content strategy as you kind of go through this. But you have to know what the journey is and what type of content is being discussed and consumed across that journey and which platforms. This is what's really interesting about keyword modifiers. There's two different screenshots, left and right. The left one is best business account for small business, and the right one is best business account to open. Now, the primary derivative of these two queries has to do with business accounts and what's best for small business. The one on the left uses best as a modifier, where the one on the right, it's got the word open as a modifier. And what is different about this is that the left-hand one is triggering a discussion in forum, where the right-hand one is triggering a people also ask. And what I'm finding in the data patterns is that the discussion of forums are being triggered on keyword queries with intent that really wants you to go out and have conversations with peers. So in this particular case, if we're to unpack that query, what is the best business account for small business? I'm generally asking a question open to what I would be asking like a group of friends or peers. What is the best business account? I'm looking for people's opinion. And that's why discussion of forums is being triggered. But on the right-hand side, I'm saying I'm not looking for that discussion. I'm now looking to action this and say, well, I'm looking to open an account. I'm ready to open this account. And what's the best one to do that? All of a sudden now Google is saying, well, since your intent has changed, you're not looking for open discussion. You've kind of made a decision. Have you also considered these questions that might help influence your decision? And that's your people also ask. So I found this kind of fascinating because the overall SERP results, you can see the #1 ranking organically is still Forbes, and NerdWallet above the people also ask. So you have NerdWallet, discussion forums, people also ask, and then Forbes below it. So the organic results are actually identical to these, but the modifiers are different and the SERP features are different. So know your keyword footprint, know what you're doing strategically. All of the data that I'm seeing, most people are just falling on this by chance. They're not actually adding a strategic element to this. And there's definitely a strategy to be had to go after this. At iQuanti, we do this quite a bit, and our content strategies be pretty complex and comprehensive, but we're able to really move the needle and really drive a larger impression share as we do this. Okay. Now, part of this discussion forum that people also ask, I'm asked a lot about AIOs. AIOs are part of the discussion of the Gen AI and the ChatGPT era that we're here and about. Of course, everybody's got a different opinion. Everybody has a different tolerance on what they want to do with AI. I will kind of try to stay to the facts. If you ask me some opinions, I'm happy to give my opinion. I have a lot of them, but nonetheless, we're going to get into a little bit more about the definition of what it is and who's who. So when we get into the Gen AI, generative searches, the top 5 players, if you will, are ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Perplexity, and Claude. And when we look at who's who and who's really driving and winning the market share, within just the Gen AI space, there's hands down ChatGPT is kind of running away with this. They're at almost a 60% market share with incredible growth overall. And then the column on what LLM they're being used that might be beneficial to anybody that wants to kind of geek out on this a little bit. But you can kind of see that Copilot's using ChatGPT 4. Well, obviously, it makes sense Gemini's going to use Gemini's and Claude's going to use Claude. But there's a very distinct difference between Gemini at 13% and ChatGPT at 60%. So when we look at this, it's definitely looking at the rise of what's going on. One of the things that I get asked a lot is about Gen AI. Is it going to really impact search? What's going to happen? Is search going to go away? As I look at that, it's kind of difficult. We're all kind of just guessing a little bit. I can tell you that AI, I think is definitely here to stay. It's not going to go backwards. The adoption rate is ridiculously high. As we look at what's happening here, look at the results. Now, Google is at 86% within all of the platforms. It's 89% if it's just talking about search platforms. But what's interesting about this is ChatGPT's at 5%, YouTube's at 7%, Bing's at 2%. Now you can look at that chart on the left and say, well, this ChatGPT, Gen AI, let's forget about that. Google's killing it. They're still the gorilla in the room. Why are we concerned so much? They're only 5%. What I would say is the other side of this coin when you interpret this data is Bing has been around, 20 years, maybe longer. ChatGPT has been around 1-2 years, a very short time. In that time span, ChatGPT has overtaken the market share by more than double than Bing in just a couple of years. So you have a 20-year platform that is sitting stale. ChatGPT has over doubled that type of market share within just a couple of years. The subscribers on the growth, you're looking at about a 12% growth estimately quarter over quarter in ChatGPT. And then they have over 300 million different subscribers currently as of Q4 2024. So obviously now being middle of Q1, end of it, it's going to be much higher as we look at those. But something to kind of know just what the landscape is, looking at what's happening in ChatGPT. And as we kind of look at AIOs, what they are, AIOs are a big fancy new answer box. Answer box was around. I remember the same type of panic and discussions. Is answer bot going to kill all of our CTRs? Are they going to take over search? What's going to happen? Now, when we break this down and kind of define what is the difference between an answer box and an AIO, an answer box typically always came from a single source, and that was showing up in this top result. Where an AIO is allowed to scrape partial matches within the indexing of a page and pull multiple sources together to form an answer, as well as interpret and use some of its own knowledge base to add in additional context based on what it knows from the overall learning and all the data patterns. So when we look at an AIO, it just becomes a little bit more exhaustive, a little bit more sources, more information as we kind of look at that. And the results are a larger on the left-hand side, where the right-hand side is that sources that it's showing. When we look at how much AIO is impacting search across the overall industries, the right-hand side is kind of a cluster map showing what's happening. Healthcare, 75 to 80% of all queries are triggering in AIO. And this makes sense when you think about it. And why it makes sense is how much of healthcare is about symptoms. You know, what to do, my nose is stuffy, or my back is sore and I'm shortness of breath. And what it's doing is it's taking all of this data and all of the symptoms, and that's a large amount of queries within the healthcare space. And it's taking all of those sources and it's providing a result for you. So it's easy to trigger that. Where you look at the other end of the spectrum, finance, it's the lowest, 15 to 20%, which this source data, I'm actually seeing our data patterns show a little bit less. I'm seeing finance about 8 to 10% from our big banks that we work with. But at the same token, it's the lowest in the category. And why that is it has to do with your money, your life category. It can't have a lot of opinion. It's a lot more binary, and you can't give the incorrect advice, just like the legal standpoint. You don't even see legal on here. But this is kind of a good understanding. No matter what category you're in, you can kind of understand what the impact is. My encouragement to you is to grab and understand how much of your keyword landscape is triggering in an AIO, and baseline that and include that in all of your metrics and your dashboards. Look at that month to a month. Not only is it growing, or look at your acquisition rate. Are you acquiring AIOs, or is the landscape just growing? Is your competitors acquiring them? What's happening? It's easy to track and do. SEMrush has got part of this in their SERP features. I'm sure everybody in the audience is used to working with SEMrush. We're not affiliated with them, but it's a great platform. And when you pull a keyword footprint, you're going to get all of the SERP features from that, and you'll be able to see the AIOs in that. They've also launched a new feature about AIOs and tracking some of the measurement on that. So again, understand what's impacting your AIOs is critical. As we bring all of this together, what I talk about is available digital shelf space. And the digital shelf space is all of the different features. It could be the platform of TikTok. It could be a paid ad at Google. It could be an organic listing on Google. It could be part of the People Also Ask. It could be the AI overview. It could be Pinterest. It could be the map pack. Whatever this is, you're going to have all of these available digital shelf space for this digital real estate. And I think it's absolutely critical in today's age of SEO to know what this is. All of this is beyond the 10 blue links. The 10 blue links is a foundational part of this. It's a must. You have to do that. But this is addition to this. Most of the conversations are happening because your journeys are fragmented. People are consuming different types of content. Attention spans are shorter. They don't have time to read everything. But you need all of the content in order to get where you need to go. So your content strategy is just going to expand. It's not that you can cut corners and you don't have to develop that long form content. You definitely need that. But you want to be able to influence that with good knowledge and strategic vision as we look at this. Which brings me to kind of this last point of how do we know? How do we know what is triggering and what is not triggering anything? I'm going to enter us into what I call the matrix. I love this slide. I love kind of this thought process and concept. It looks busy, I understand, but stick with me for a moment. This is just an example of a handful of keywords. You can do this, which is what iQuanti does. We do this for entire footprints, thousands, 200,000, 700,000 keyword footprints. But you can do this with the entire footprint. But look at the results that it's doing. Every single keyword is giving you a different SERP feature. Again, this is marrying a couple data points. You can pull this from SEMrush. You can pull this from other reports and social listening as you kind of look at this. But the idea is to know what is what. So for example, let's look at the second line, the video results. Now there's a lot of blank spaces across the board until we get to almost the end, best credit cards. Now, what's interesting is the one right before that, best cashback credit card, does not trigger a video result, but best credit cards does. So if you had to ask yourself, where do I invest the money? What videos should I create and what should I not create? I wouldn't run out and start creating video about secured credit cards or best cashback credit cards because it doesn't even trigger a result in Google. Now, if I have endless amount of time and all kinds of budget and I've done everything else, sure, I'll go do that because it's still going to help relevancy for that landing page and that organic positioning. So it's still a good thing to do. But since we know that budgets aren't endless and time isn't, a luxury that we typically have, I'm going to pick and choose and prioritize. And if I do that, I'm going to look at a matrix like this and say, well, the 3 videos I want to create are best credit cards. What is an APR? And how do credit cards work? Now, this is going to work with your whatever category you're in. It could be mountain bikes, it could be travel, it could be manufacturing, it could be cleaning, chimneys, whatever it is, it's the same thing. So don't get caught up on the keywords. Make sure that you understand the concept of what I'm saying here. And what we're seeing is that every keyword has a different feature available. This is critically important to your content strategy when you start creating copy and content for the best credit card page versus the secured credit card page. Or, for example, your people also ask. What I'm finding is the people also ask are occupying almost 99% of every footprint. It's almost on every single keyword. It triggers the people also ask. Well, that is wonderful insight that tells you what your content should include. You should make sure and take those people also ask queries for that topic, include them into your content on your page, wrap your schema around that, and build that out that the crawlers can crawl that as a partial snippet and pull that in, not only to an AIO, but also get into the people also ask. But this kind of cheat sheet really allows you to define and hyper focus your content strategy across the web. I know which ones are triggering an AIO, what do I need to do there, what is doing image pack, so on and so forth. Okay. When we look at this is, again, I'm just pulling some data that I had. You can do this with your category as well. But this is a kind of an understanding. In personal loan space, there's 1,600 core keywords that make up that journey. 1,500 of the 1,600 keywords are triggering people also ask. Look at the credit card, 1,881. 1,811 keywords of the 1,881 are triggering people also ask. Deposits, 1,393, 1,376 are triggering. So oftentimes I'm asked, well, all of this fear and panic on AIOs. Well, when I look at the AIOs, 79 out of 1,600, 175 out of 1,800, 6 out of 114, 180 out of 1,393. These are low percentages. My bigger concern should be the people also ask. And why? Because typically the PAA is placed between the first organic and the second organic result, which means your second, third, and fourth ranking is going to be dropped below the fold, which means your CTRs are going to drop. So being part of the people also ask, knowing that it's usually about 99% of the footprint, you have to address this. You need to make sure your content is there and your overall organic visibility is covering that. We create a visibility report. This is something that we look at. We look at your company versus other competitors. We pull your landscape. We look at all of this here. And then we create what your overall weighted visibility is from an organic standpoint. And it's very something that looks like this. There's a lot of data that goes behind this to kind of roll this up. But I am offering, if anybody's interested, please email me afterwards, and we can look at creating one of these for your company as complimentary, because you're part of the webinar here. So I do appreciate your time coming in here. But it's great data to understand what this visibility report looks like. So when you email me, just say, I'm interested in the visibility report, and we'll try to connect with you and go through this. But it's going to look at your landscape. It won't be ours. It won't be a financial if you're not in financial. And it'll look at your landscape and say, okay, well, who are your top 3 competitors? How are you placed? What is their visibility versus your visibility? And we'll get this data all put together for you. You'll be kind of shocked at this. 2 things that I find out from this typically is, one, that your brand typically is a very low visibility. I've yet to come across anybody that has a high visibility across all of these different features in these digital real estate. Number 2, because of number 1, your competitors really don't have coverage either. So I was sitting with a CMO going through kind of an annual strategy session, and we showed this, and of course theirs was pretty much, zeros across the board. And it was such a great insight because she just got it. She just understood what we're seeing, and she wasn't afraid or opposed to seeing that their brand had zeros. She saw that all of her competitors also had zeros, and she thought that, hey, this is a great first to market opportunity. Let's really jump on this. And that's the second part of this. Because nobody's really putting effort into this, it leaves a really large opportunity from a competitive standpoint. And as long as I've been doing this, which is a really long time, I can tell you the amount of first opportunities are slim to none in the internet space right now. And this is still one of those that is still overlooked strategically. So it doesn't have to be, though. People don't fall in these by accident. You can actually go after these. There's algorithmic metrics and KPIs that you can measure and track against that. So know your visibility, know what's triggering it, know your competitors. So with all this being said, what do we need to do? How do we get started? Again, I'm going to go back to the data. You absolutely must understand your keyword landscape in relationship to the journey of your user. You have to group the keywords into like-minded intents. Now, this is pretty simple, but it's subjective as well. There is a rare find in the English dictionary that you have more than a dozen keywords that actually mean the exact same thing. So if you have a page that's got 50 or 60 or 80 keywords to it, it's wrong. You don't have enough intent to match all of those. You're going to have mixed intents because of the keywords. You can't have 80 keywords that mean exactly the same thing. Google wants to see something very elementary, a one-to-one relationship. One intent equals one page, and that's just a good kind of rule of thumb to do. If you can do that, all of the core algo updates, all of the relevancy updates, you're going to be able to stand the test of time because it wants to match the best, most relevant result to the user, and that is a one-to-one relationship. Your page, your content has got enough relevancy and enough authority to match for that one particular topic and that intent. So, long story coming back, it's critically important to group all of these topics. place them on a board, understand the connection of what this looks like, and then you can roll things up. In this particular example, there's 197 core page topics, which means I need 197 pages to complete this journey. I also have 1,376 people also asks that I have to account for. Those have to be isolated and identified onto which ones go onto the 197 pages. And then you have to make sure that the 197 pages incorporate this content and these FAQs from the PAAs. It's also triggering 202 videos. So I would absolutely want to create 202 different videos, and I would know exactly what topics to create based on this data. And lastly, there's 615 AIOs that are triggering this as well. So we know what to do and be able to change our content to suffice for that. Now, this is just data. This is just for Google, but you're going to see that these core topics are, no matter what the platform is, that journey is that journey. And then you just have to distribute this and make sure you're part of these conversations on other platforms as well. And of course, your video, as we talked about, you can resurface that accordingly. Okay. So all in all, what do we want to kind of do? We want to make sure and own that journey. You have to commit to how much of that journey you want to own. How many platforms do you want to own? So own what you want to know, what part of the discussion in that journey, how many assets are required, how many pages are required, and then where to attack, what positions and what platforms do you want to be part of. It's not going to fit with everybody's brand strategy. I know some people are like, we're against TikTok, there's nothing we can do, can't do it. Fine, that's great. Just know that what percentage of that you're leaving on the table is fine, and make that cognitive decision, and you can go after other platforms and other content. Some people are, I can't do Reddit. That's okay too. Just know which part of that journey you're not going to be in those discussion and forums. After you know that and commit to it, then you're going to create that content plan. You're going to do all of the data, everything that I talked about here, and you're going to correlate that and put it into a strategy that allows you to create, and you're going to cross-reference that with, of course, what you have already published, and how do you have to optimize existing assets to take advantage of that. But it's going to really influence your overall content plan. And then again, the additional assets are above and beyond just the original content. So this needs to be rolled up into your content plan. So you know, are there different things that you need to do for the PAs, for example? That's going to affect your page copy. The videos, of course, is different assets, different content types. And then you get into the development, writing, designing, developing, and lastly, your platform distribution. Now you can distribute this again across, since you've already defined where you're going to attack, what platforms, how much of this journey is you're going to do, you can distribute this. Now, with all of this being said, this is just half of the equation. This half is just getting the content developed and created that matches the journey and getting it in the right platforms. This doesn't mean you're going to automatically rank. Every platform, obviously we know Google requires trust signals. Every platform has a different part of the algorithm that changes how much their videos or how much of the content is being seen. For example, both TikTok, its time of video, its overall views, those influence how broad or what your reach is like for that video. So you're going to have to understand the authoritative metrics within each platform as well. But this is the first part of the equation as we look at that. So I know I've went through a lot today. I do want to leave some time for some questions here. As I kind of roll this up, I encourage you to reach out to me. My email is wayne.c@iquanti.com. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I love connections. I'm an open book. I don't need to sell you anything to give you advice. I'm not a sales guy, if you will. But if you have a question about anything, inbox me, message me. I'm happy to share insights. One of the things I just really loved is one of the first times I was able to tap my network. I had a mentee that was looking for something, and I was able to tap it. And what a wonderful response. So networking, I do believe, is just a fantastic kind of part of this. And of course, I am trying to do I don't have a lot of videos yet on the YouTube and the TikTok, but there is something there. Most of these webinars, if you scan the QR code, it's going to go to a page with all of my past webinars. There's a lot of different topics there. You can download these presentations. on iQuanti's website with those past webinars. So with that, I really thank you for your time. I'll turn it back over and we can try to get some questions. So, Danny?
All right. Thank you for that. Yeah, we have some questions coming in, so we'll dive right in. Lindsay had a question. How do you optimize for the keyword landscape that triggers AI overviews? Do you have any tips for people
Sure.
there?
Yeah, the interesting that we actually, and Lindsay, anybody else interested in Gen AI stuff, email me. We are releasing a PDF thought paper, a research paper that we just concluded, I just wrote, as well as a small deck that we can kind of go through. And it talks about learnings. It talks about what to do with AIOs, the short-term learnings, long-term learnings. And I was just going to kind of summarize to help answer this question. What we are finding, believe it or not, is different correlation models, what is triggering the AIOs. Ranks, obviously, in Google and Bing are incredibly important. You have to be ranked. But at the same time, the rank order, it doesn't necessarily need to be in the top 5 or top 10. We've seen positions in the top 30, top 50 that are also appearing in the AIO, which then begs the question, well, why did it skip over the other 49 results to get to the 50th result? What was important about that? So we're seeing that relevancy is really playing a larger role than authority in the AIO. So make sure that the AIO has relevancy. We're seeing some boosts on that when you include very specific and unique data. So your content can't be vague. Include statistics, data metrics, quotations, really good authoritative elements that the bot can bring into this. So think of it as if 4 of the 5 sources are very generic and your 5th is also generic, why would you be included? But if 4 or 5 are generic and you already have hard data and factual information, you're going to automatically get kind of be included in that. The other thing that we're doing at iQuanti is we have a whole list of hypotheses that we're actually testing, which is super cool. We're going to start releasing those. But for example, one of them is the answer anatomy. Can we look at the correlation of the answer across thousands of different queries and look at that? Is there a common denominator, like a who, what, where, when, that's being part of this? And what does that do so we can influence our content? So we're going to be releasing a lot of that findings from our research. So make sure and follow and reach out to us. But those are a couple quick tricks. Ranking definitely matters. The relevancy, boosting unique content in there.
Okay, great. Next question we'll go to William had a question. Is there any, I think he means data about click-through rates on some of the SERP features you were talking about, a lot of them there. Do they contribute to lead flow, basically? Those Google SERP features?
Yeah, great question. So what's interesting that the pivot that we're seeing in SEO is moving away from traffic and talking about more visibility and impression share. Now, I know traffic's definitely important, but it goes back, and I'm going to date myself a little bit before the internet. When people bought billboards on a big, busy highway, how do you know the billboard worked? Well, you have impressions. You have eyeballs that's seen it. That was their whole thing, that there's 5 million people that are driving down this road. Everybody's going to see that. There's no way to really quantify what that impression share did to the bottom line. But what you can do is you can triangulate some data. You can say, okay, well, here was my conversion, here was my traffic, and look at this pre-AIO versus post. You can also get referral traffic and analytics, GA4 from Gen AI, that's coming through. You can measure your market share in Gen AI. SEMrush's got some tools. We're putting a dashboard together for some tools on that. So you can kind of see some of that. But some of this is triangulating this. And really what we're trying to do is see the correlation between direct clicks and non-clicks and how that actually is still impacting the overall business acquisition. So the answer is you can kind of triangulate that data.
Okay. Let's see. Question from Lauro. When you're saying get involved with Reddit, are you saying on behalf of our business? I often find that people don't like when they see businesses getting involved in these types of things.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that's why a lot of businesses kind of shy away from it. The success that I had mentioned was creating an account called your customer care team. And you're able to jump in those discussions, correct something as a business. For example, I had one client that did a lot in pet insurance. Well, the discussions about the pet insurance were off base or they were incorrect. and the customer care team could have joined those conversations, say, well, actually, no, our pet insurance includes A, B, and C, but you're right about, D and E type of a thing. So you kind of bring it into that instead of being so opinionated as a user. But that's one of the risks why people are staying away from Reddit. But the customer care team is usually an angle that works.
Okay. Question from Steve. Would a long page be less effective than a site with more inner pages?
Yes, I'm going to say it's going to be less effective. And if I'm understanding your question, will one long page be less or more effective than multiple shorter pages? The answer is absolutely yes. And the reason why it's yes, without me having any more knowledge of that, is that a long page is going to talk about a lot of different topics on the same page. Your topics have to be isolated to a single topic. So the shorter pages are going to be about one particular topic. So if you have a page and you're talking about 5 topics on that page, you should be talking about the macro part of that page, and then you should have 5 sub-pages that are talking about each topic. And that's the proper way just to do all SEO across the board. This happens a lot when people talk about services. I do this and this, but then they include everything that they do instead of breaking those all out individual pages. It's just being lazy. Don't be lazy. You got to do the work. You got to write the content. The reward is going to be the algorithm and the rankings, because you're never going to rank. Think about it as an FAQ page. If I have an FAQ page with 20 different questions and they're all different, what should that page actually rank for? If you were to try to say, okay, well, you can't come up with an answer. There's 20 different questions. That means there's 20 different topics. But if every one was its own page, then you know exactly what that page should rank for. So individual pages always wins.
Okay. Let's do one more. I believe it's Abiha. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. Do you have any tips on how to optimize content for AI? I'm assuming LLMs like ChatGPT, which is different from optimizing for AI overviews.
Yeah, again, we are getting some of those learnings coming in. The learnings out on the web are very vague. They're talking about some boosting ability here, but it does stem with content. All of these AIs, the gen searches and all of those are still crawling the site, crawling the internet for content, and they're using all of those as database foundations to be able to do that. So again, it comes back to, do you have all the content? Do you have them all into these small short pages? And are you elaborating on them that it can actually feed that knowledge base? So it's a little bit more of a complicated answer. I'm happy to go through that with you a little bit if you reach out to me. I can actually kind of explain that a little bit more in depth on that. But there is a slightly different tactics that you do for Gen AI, trying to get in the ChatGPT versus the results of AIO.
Okay, and that's all the time we have for today. I know we didn't get to a lot of questions, so if we didn't get to yours, we'll be sure to pass it along to Wayne. So on behalf of Search...
Sorry, real quick. The questions, one last thing. I will answer all the questions myself. Feel free to send them to me. I do go through every one of them. I will reply individually. So feel free, if we didn't cover it, reach out, send them across, and I will definitely get to them.
Amazing. Thanks, Wayne. So on behalf of Search Engine Land, I want to thank Wayne for a great presentation and everyone in our audience for attending this webinar. Hope that you'll join us again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.